New York just took a major step towards a $15 an hour minimum wage. Now, raising those wages, it's been a pillar in Mayor de Blasio's progressive agenda. But when a state panel recommended hiking the wage for fast food workers at Big Change, guess who got the credit? Now, if you guessed de Blasio, you'd be wrong. Check out the headline. Governor Cuomo delivered a clear win. De Blasio's name not even mentioned. Similar thing happened. Remember with universal pre-K? Cuomo, he schooled de Blasio even though it was BDB's idea. Expanding it was a staple of de Blasio's platform. We talked about it throughout the campaign. But when it was actually all said and done, Cuomo swooped in, took all the credit. Governor also outmaneuvered the mayor over Uber. Dominic got me saying that yesterday. De Blasio, he wanted to restrict the car service company's growth. Cuomo didn't. De Blasio wound up doing a U-turn on this, and Cuomo got his way as well as a victory. I guess there's two parts, but for me, there's the optics part of it, Dominic, but then there's also the horse trading part. Uber's the perfect example. The mayor went out on point on this. Now, whatever you think of Cuomo, he at least added up the votes, and more importantly, he figured out where the constituencies were going to play and saw how this thing was going to go. He didn't take some principled stand. Now, you can argue, hey, at least de Blasio, and I think it's really because that's where the taxi dollars were going for him, Viverito, and the rest, but let's even say he principally believed that this was going to hurt the yellow cabs and all the rest. He didn't do the grungy work, which is to find out where all the bodies were buried and figure out who was going to vote, who's going to say what at the city council, what the unions were going to do on this one way or the other, how this was going to play out, who support, who had his back, and who didn't. He just goes out and does it. That, to me, is his weakness more than, flying all over God's creation saying that he's the king progressive. To me, there's a naivete here that if he says he believes it in enough and does a press conference, he doesn't do the politics, which has to be part of the job.
You are correct, but you know this better than anyone. With this governor, you've got to get up very early in the morning to beat him at his own game. Governor Cuomo, like him, hate him, love him. He is a master at the political process.
Okay, but you covered Mayor Bloomberg, okay? Mayor Bloomberg, if he believed in something and wanted something...
But Bloomberg is different. Bloomberg's different because when you got billions that you can go throw something on TV to argue your point, that changes the dynamics real fast. But let me just say this about Cuomo. State panel had to approve this. Cuomo appointed this panel. The mayor could scream till he's blue in the face. He can't change the hourly rate. You've got to go through Albany. And so when you've got to go through Cuomo, Cuomo is going to get all the credit. Believe me, 10 times out of 10.
And for anybody who says it's semantics, at the end of the day, universal pre-K got done, minimum wage got raised, they're missing the point. If people don't think you have leverage and people think that you don't have stick at the end of the game, they'll negotiate with you differently. It's important who's in the headline. It's not just semantics. And I think sometimes that's lost here.
Yeah, I agree exactly with what both of you said, what each of you said. Bill de Blasio is not good at it. He doesn't do the groundwork. He doesn't understand the mechanisms of government. And Andrew Cuomo is an absolute master at it. I mean, he came into Albany painting himself as an outsider, but he grew up in that town. I mean, he was his father's chief advisor, his campaign manager. He knows every lever of power in Albany, and he uses it to the max. He outfoxed de Blasio over and over again over the last couple of years, and he'll keep doing it. You're right, de Blasio, he wears his passion on his sleeve. He runs out there half-cocked, starts the conversations, and he should get credit, although I don't agree with the policies that have gone through, but he should get credit for advancing it. Cuomo delivers it and then steals the spotlight.
How many times does this have to happen before he gets the MO? It's not working his way. Uber's the best example. He could have gotten political cover for this if it was somebody else, but he ends up looking terrible at the end of the day.
Let's put Uber aside just for now because I disagree with your premise on Uber. But with the other issues, what strategy would you have de Blasio employ that would stop Cuomo from coming in and trumping him on a state level?
He would have built. I can answer. He would have built a coalition like every other elected official from dog catcher in Paducah, Iowa, to whatever.
Right, but
instead, what does he do? He gets in front of the camera.
Then the state still would have had to raise the minimum wage. The state still would have had to approve universal pre-K. The state still would have had to approve
put the heat on Cuomo. But you asked me a question. If it's not rhetorical, what he did was he stated a policy paper like he's a professor, okay? But instead, what he needed to do was, if he wanted to get the credit at the end of the day, and everybody says they don't care about the credit, that's full of you know what. If he wanted to, he would have aligned enough people standing up behind him that it was his initiative. He's already rounded up these folks. He never does that. So then what happens? Of course, it has to go through Albany. But then the mayor can come in, dictate it on his terms, which is substantive. It's not just about optics. That's about policy. He allows himself to get co-opted. And I'm telling you, I have never seen politicians that have to coexist where one outmaneuvers with the same move every single time.
And he's still going to get up and say, I got minimum wage raised. If it wasn't for me,
he's looking in the mirror when he says it because nobody else thinks.
I disagree with you. As long as he's not running against Andrew Cuomo, it's not an issue. If he's running for re-election as mayor, he can still say, I start these progressive policies and I got them
Have you been him telling you how many Democrats are already trying to prepare maybe to do a primary challenge?
Of course they're saying that at this point. I'm waiting to see one happen.
All he would have had to do was put together the coalition that Richard's describing and then demand of Governor Cuomo that it get done. And then de Blasio gets the win when Cuomo caves. That's the perception.
Which he did on mayoral control.
Well
and
he didn't.
And he still got moved. And as for the Uber thing, all that's happened on Uber is wait 4 months.
No. It was, you can say that, but the only person I hear making that claim is the mayor. He capitulated and caved on it because at the end, David Plouffe, ran a campaign that made him look like a chump. And he also lost because the governor came out, because the governor was smart enough to see how the wind was blowing here politically and came out on the side of Uber.
He had the votes on the city council. It was going to be passed if they voted on it.
Also,
it was going to.
Uber's spokesman also was the former spokesman for Governor Cuomo in the last campaign, a gentleman named Matt Wing, who is a very talented guy. Yep. He gets how it works. He outfoxed the city.
I'm just telling you, voters don't care about the process. They don't. They don't. We do.
Okay. And he also cares about who gets the credit. We want to get you involved in our conversation. Head over to Facebook as well as Twitter and answer a question today. Is a $15 minimum wage the right amount, too little, or too much? It's like the three bears or whatever, the three bets. All right, coming up next here, trust me, even if you're not a big fan of foreign policy, whatever, fascinating woman, fascinating conversation, fascinating life story. U.S. got rid of Saddam Hussein, you know that, but it never got rid of the sectarian problems in Iraq. Up next, the true story of the attempt to rebuild the country and the volunteer who risked her life many times over to help.